Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Simon's Trading Channel. My name's Simon, and I do a daily Bitcoin price action analysis. It's a Sunday, which means that there are but 12 hours, more or less, until we get the weekly closure. And if catastrophe doesn't occur within the next 12 hours, then it looks like it's going to be a nice, big, girthy green candle, which is clearly good if you are wanting for Bitcoin to go up. Um, I kind of want it to come down now. I'm ready to short, but hey ho. My short yesterday, by the way, got stopped out for a small loss. Silly me. Shouldn't be shorting against the trend. I did actually, the trade that I wanted to happen did indeed happen, but life got in the way and I missed my exit point. So never mind. That's all part of trading. And I'll show you on the chart in a second how that helped. Hopefully, I've learned something from it and maybe you can too. Before we get straight into it, I do want to remind you that I'm definitely not a financial advisor and this is definitely not financial advice. All right, so this is the weekly time frame. What I've done today, which is a little bit different to my previous videos, is we're going to do sequential support lines. And what I mean by that, starting on the weekly, going down to the 15-minute juicy stuff. So the weekly support line, as I see it at the moment, is around about, I remember they're areas, they're not lines, but I just draw them on as lines, otherwise the screen would look mental. 44, just say 44,000. And that just takes in most of these closures from the weekly. So that's the weekly support area. It was resistance on the way up. So in theory, it'll turn into support on the way down. Then if we zoom down to a daily, I've got my next one on. And you could put these in a few different areas, but I've decided to put mine just at these closures here. So this next blue line up here, which is coming in at 47,000, give or take, is my daily support line. I then zoom down to a 4-hour, and the next line you can see here is this one, which is around 47.5, and you can see it takes in these candle closures and that wick there. So remember, these are just my lines, and they're not absolute lines, they're just Simon's lines of randomness, but I hope they are logical, if nothing else. I've then got one more line, and it's a 15-minute support line. And I've also got some diagonals on here, which I'll explain in a second. So this top line is the 15-minute support line. You could do it as an hourly, but it just works out. It just visually looks better on a 15-minute time frame. And so this one's coming in around about 48.1. So we've got the 15-minute support line, the 4-hour support line, the daily support line, and then further down the weekly. And the reason for this is that if you just zoom out, you obviously the weekly is quite far down, but if you zoom out, even though this is on a 15-minute time frame, I've got lines of significant support going up to the daily. And so the point of that is that you can get information for the lower time frames from the higher time frames. And if it then makes sense when you look at the chart, well, that's a good thing. And at the end of the day, even though these lines are lines of randomness, they should make some sense. Otherwise, there's no point in drawing them on. So this is how I got my chart at the moment, and it makes sense to me. I've also done a couple of diagonals. Now, all these diagonals are doing are just representing the trend. Sometimes, you don't want a cluttered screen. I don't find this too cluttered. But what you want to do is try and identify the predominant trend for the time period of which you're looking. Otherwise, if you're just looking, if you don't have any rationality within your thought process, you get lost a little bit within the price action. And that's certainly why I do it. I don't know why other traders do it, but this is why I do it. And it's just to provide a little bit of rationale to what could otherwise look like a lot of random candles. So what I saw here was a steep uptrend with a break of the steep uptrend, and then what was more or less sideways and down, but the wick highs are represented by this downward line. And what you'll notice here was the upward trend was much steeper or had a greater magnitude than the downward trend. And then the same again happened overnight for me when I was hopefully having delicious dreams, although I can't remember them, so that's a shame. There was a big move up, so an impulsive move, people call it, but basically a pretty much vertical line of lows, and then since the early hours really in the UK, there's been a pullback, and I've drawn on this diagonal line here. Now, when I drew it on, the price was it was only 15 minutes ago. Didn't take me too long to come up with today's plan, which is good. And as you can see, price does look like it's reacted from there. So, yeah, good for the long that I just set. But that's just for me, that's not for anyone else. And so it looks like now there's a break in character again, and that would suggest more upside. Now, when it comes to then in my mind, what I tend to do for this sort of sequence of price action is I'm going to look to take some profits around the previous high, because if I was to remember, these are all lines of support. If I was to put in a line of resistance as price makes its way up, I would have to have, logic would suggest, maybe I'll do it as a dashed line, a line of resistance at that area. You could argue the same for this 15-minute support line. When price came up to it, it behaved as resistance. Obviously, it wasn't in existence at that point. But when the pullback occurred, you would expect a reaction when it then approached the same area, but it just busted on through. It may have sort of paused on the very low time frames, like the 5-minute chart, but it just busted on through. That won't happen every time, of course, and so it might not even get there this time. But that's where I'll be taking profits myself for this. It's more of a scalp trade than anything else, and then we'll see what happens. That's enough for today, I think. 8 minutes. I've got a little bit more time. If we just zoom out to the weekly again. So I'd be looking at an area of resistance coming in at the moment around 52,000. So that, that's probably not for today, although you never know, Bitcoin can do that sort of move in one day, but probably not over a weekend. However, if Bitcoin does continue to uptrend as it is, 52,000 looks like a higher time frame target for me. And I just want this pullback to happen sooner rather than later, because I really want to short this market, as I've told you for the last few days. Anyway, I hope that was useful. Please remember to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, if you found it useful, or if you just want to see my face again. And I'll catch you tomorrow. Take it easy.